I've talked before about how women are often written out of history, but what if we brought them back in? What if we talked about the powerful women who ruled, led and inspired in medieval Europe? Welcome to my channel, Boring History Club. Today we start a new series on empowering women of medieval Europe. And stick around to the end for your first look at an upcoming episode. We'll be talking about all kinds of women, from queens to peasant women, saints to sinners. We'll discuss their lives, their choices, and how they got things done in a man's world. So sit back, grab a cup of your favorite beverage, and get ready to learn about some amazing women who lived during the Middle Ages. So for our first episode, let's talk about the unsung heroines of medieval Europe. I am referring specifically today to 5 women who shaped medieval Europe without a crown. They didn't have the title queen, duchess, or lady, but their influence was no less important. The title is taken from a book by author and Professor Barbara Mertz. I will say that while this book was the inspiration for this series, it is very much dated, so there are newer books and articles that I will be using to supplement it. That said, the book is still useful and serves as a good introduction to these remarkable women. So who are these women, and how did they shape the medieval world? Well, let's meet them. Our first woman is Hildegard of Bingen. She was a German Benedictine abbess, writer, composer, philosopher, Christian mystic, natural scientist, and physician. She experienced visions starting when she was 3 years old and wrote about them starting when she was 42. In her visions, she saw the ordered structure of the universe, including the creation of the world and humanity's fall from grace. She also saw hell and its tortures. You can see where this might be a bit troubling. But rather than giving into temptation and writing a rather lurid travelogue of her vision, she wrote a constructive theological piece called Civius, which is Latin for show me, God, the way. Hildegard's writings and compositions had a major impact on the religious thought of the Middle Ages and beyond. Now, not everyone loved her ideas. Some people, especially men, were skeptical of a woman claiming to have visions, but Hildegard didn't let that stop her. She traveled all over Germany, including to the courts of several bishops, to share her message. Her impact was so great that she was later canonized as a saint. Hildegard wasn't the only one who saw visions, though. Another woman with a similar background was Saint Bridget of Sweden. While Hildegard was active in Germany, Bridget was experiencing visions and having prophetic dreams. Bridget founded the Order of Saint Bridget, also known as the Brigittine Order, which became one of the most important religious orders in Northern Europe. The order was open to both men and women and focused on helping pilgrims on their way to the Holy Land. They ran hospitals, hostels, and schools along major pilgrimage routes. But the order didn't just help travelers, they also fought against poverty and injustice. Members of the order worked to improve the lives of the poor and sick and to protect the rights of women and children. It's interesting to note that both Hildegard and Bridget started their religious vocations later in life. Hildegard joined a monastery at the age of 14, while Bridget married a nobleman and had children before entering religious life. This was unusual during the Middle Ages when most women entered convents or abbeys as teenagers. But these 2 women show that it was not impossible. Now, both women were mystics, but our third woman was more of a scientist. Trota of Salerno was an Italian physician and writer who lived during the 12th century. She was one of the first women to study medicine in Salerno, Italy, and the first to publish a medical text in Europe. Trota's most famous work is a book called Ege Livru Potentado, which translates to the Book of the Art of Medicine. This book was based on her lectures at the University of Salerno, which she gave in the 1150s. The book covered a wide range of topics, including surgery, obstetrics, diseases of the eye, ear and throat, and treatments for various illnesses. But Trota wasn't just a teacher and writer, she was also a practitioner. She worked as a physician, helping to deliver babies and treat the sick and wounded. She was even called upon to treat King Roger II of Sicily. Despite her many accomplishments, little is known about Trota's personal life. We don't know when or where she was born, who her parents were, or even whether she was married. But we do know that she was highly respected by her peers and students. Her book was used as a standard medical text throughout Europe for centuries, and her legacy as a pioneer in the field of medicine continues to inspire women today. While Trotta was a pioneer in the field of medicine, our next woman was a pioneer in the field of literature. Christine de Pizan was a French writer and one of the earliest professional female writers in Europe. She was born in Venice to a family of exiled nobles, and spent her early life traveling with her father. When he died, Christine moved to Paris with her brother, where she met some of the leading intellectuals of the day, including Jean de Meun, who would later write the famous poem The Roman de la Rose. Christine's first book was a collection of prayers and meditations called The Treasure of the City of Ladies. She wrote this book in response to a series of anti-female texts that were popular in France at the time. These texts argued that women were inferior to men and should be subservient to them. But Christine challenged this view, arguing that women were equal to men and could excel in any field if given the opportunity. She continued to write on this theme, producing works that praised the abilities and accomplishments of women throughout history. However, Christine wasn't just a writer, she was also a businesswoman. She knew the value of her work and was not afraid to charge for it. In fact, she was one of the first women in Europe to earn a living writing books. This was not easy, however, as she often had to fight for her right to work and publish. But Christine's determination and talent paid off, and she became one of the most successful writers of her time. The last woman we'll cover today was a queen in all but name. Eleanor of Aquitaine was one of the most powerful women in medieval Europe. She was the daughter of the Duke of Aquitaine and the Duchess of Eleanor of England, who chose her as the bride for her son, the future King Henry II. As a young woman, she caught the eye of her cousin, Louis VII of France, and the two began a secret affair. This caused a political crisis, as Louis was engaged to marry Henry's sister, but Louis and Eleanor were determined to be together, and eventually the two men went to war to try and make it happen. Henry won the war and Eleanor was returned to him, but not before being held captive in a castle for over a year. When she returned to England, she was married to Henry, and the two quickly became one of the most powerful couples in Europe. They had two sons, Richard and John, who would go on to become kings of England. However, Eleanor and Henry's marriage was not a happy one. They grew apart and eventually had an official falling out. Henry went on a crusade to the Holy Land, while Eleanor returned to Aquitaine to take care of her ailing mother. But Henry soon returned home, and he and Eleanor had a huge fight over who was really in charge. Henry accused Eleanor of adultery and imprisoned her for 15 years. Despite the hardships she faced, Eleanor never gave up. She used her time in prison to plan her next move, and she ultimately came out on top. When Henry died in 1189, Eleanor was released from prison and she immediately set about consolidating her power. She made Richard King of England and then set about making him a true medieval Renaissance man. She was a patron of the arts and learning, and she also worked to promote trade and economic growth. She was particularly interested in the welfare of women and children, and she worked to improve their lives in any way she could. Eleanor's efforts to build up Aquitaine did not go unnoticed, and she was soon called upon to help solve problems in other parts of Europe. She acted as a peacemaker in a number of conflicts, and she was even offered the throne of France. In the end, she decided to stay in Aquitaine, where she continued to rule until her death in 1204. These 5 women were just a few of the many amazing women who lived during the Middle Ages. They were all different in many ways, but they were also alike in many ways. They were all strong, intelligent women who were not afraid to speak their minds and stand up for what they believed in. They were also all highly accomplished in their fields, whether it be science, medicine, literature, or politics. These women proved that women were more than capable of holding their own in a man's world. They showed that women could be doctors, scientists, writers, and leaders. In the coming weeks, we will continue to explore the lives of these amazing women and learn more about their contributions to history. We will also meet some new faces and hear their stories. I am excited to bring you this new series, and I hope you enjoy it. For our next episode, we're going to be talking about what medieval women really wore and why it mattered. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. Also, please let me know in the comments below what other aspects of medieval women's lives you'd like to see us cover. And finally, remember to like and share this video if you think someone else might enjoy it. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you next time.